matured. I had one of the panelists saying that we should not glorify and say that there's light at the end of the tunnel. It could be an SGR that you are meeting head on. And so before you rejoice, you must ask yourself, is that light at the end of the tunnel the real light that I actually anticipate that is coming with good things? So I think the proverb is talking much more on an area where, we usually look at flowers and anticipate that there's something good that is coming out of, coming forth. So you see maize flowering, the maize corn is just about to, come on. However, sometimes you may not really live to see the maize, or even the fruit itself might not be there. If it is there, probably it's very bitter.
You analyze it beautifully.
Beautifully.
Thank you.
Beautifully,
Right.
indeed.
So one understands that thing was given some forensic attention.
Definitely.
Indeed it was. All right, so there's a National Cyber Security Strategy 2025-2029.
Right.
It's in draft.
Yes.
It's going to come out soon. And we're also looking at the role of the public in then being able to roll this out, getting understanding. But we want to get into now cybersecurity, the status of it yet, that then led towards the draft of this strategy. So I would like an overview from you, Hannington. First of all, in terms of when we talk about you being the director of the Kenya Forensics Examiners, what do you do?
So Kenya Forensic Examiners is a private institution or body that looks into collection of evidence, analysis of the same evidence, and being able to present the same evidence in a manner that is admissible to the law for various decisions. So it is an umbrella body that largely comprises of experts who have the knowledge in data acquisition and analysis for presentation in either tribunals or even courts for decision making. Yes.
Okay, so private entity that is helping private and public institutions.
Very right.
All right, so what are some issues that you look into?
There are quite a number. Issues that range into the ICT space, issues that relate to documents, issues that relate to firearms, and many more other issues that probably have the ability to contain what we call the digital evidence. This is evidence that has been infiltrated into the digital space or digital gadgets, say the mobile phones. Talk about the cloud itself. We have now e-mobility coming in, and we have a lot of data that is being disseminated from one system to another. Now that ability to acquire it forensically and being able to analyze it again forensically for easy decision making is part of what we do.
Okay. Now, opening all of this up, is there something that everybody, for example, what the law says, more or less, people know what you can or cannot do. When it comes to the cyberspace, is it clear in terms of what people can or cannot do? Are the lines very clear in terms of where you can go, what you can do, what you can manipulate, or what you can't manipulate? Is it clear?
I would say that's part of why we are trying to ask members of public to come out and submit their views into this cyber strategy 2025-2029, because that is not clear enough. And much as we have the law, we have the framework, we have the policies, both at the national and sector levels, still this thing is not very clear. And so once in a while you have challenges trying to navigate those criminal justice process, because the manner in which the evidence was acquired, the manner in which it was analyzed is not authentic. Or even if it's authentic, the report that then comes out of it is not for everyone's consumption. Most of the time, it is left for the experts. But you see, largely, the people who consume digital information are everybody everywhere. And so part of what this Clarion call is for today is to ensure that we go through that strategic document and understand it, dissect it, analyze it, and be informed on what the expectation is, because this is what will definitely guide our digital future for the next 5 years.
All right, so let's talk about cybersecurity from the aspect that it is an evolving area, pretty much, that is new. You'd say other democracies, other regions have well understood how to go about it. In Kenya, we are coming with our strategy at the moment, and all this is to try and bolster our response in matters to do with the evolving threat. But even as we get to that, you find that most cases that go to court and someone comes with an evidence, it would be admissible because of how it was collected, how it was processed, and even how it was filed. So in terms of just bolstering the collection of evidence, or someone knowing what to do, what not to do, even when gathering such, or protecting yourself, where would you place the country?
A lot has happened. I can't pretty say that we are in a bad place. We have come a long way. We're coming from a time when we were not able to actually even tell where the critical evidence lies within an infrastructure. So as we speak today, we have information technology, and we have leveraged on many platforms to enable us, enhance that capacity in terms of digital and analysis. There before, I would say there was a little bit of confusion, and we'll have even different government bodies overlapping in their roles in terms of evidence collection and even presentation and prosecution. And this one had a greater impact, particularly in courts. You could find that a lot of cases delayed so much because there was no capacity of understanding the critical evidence, one that would be much more sufficient in prosecution. So there was largely lack of understanding on where the critical evidence lies. However, today we are a little bit much more enhanced, and we see our courts have upgraded their capacity in terms of knowing what would be required in a particular kind of case to sustain probably conviction or even dismissal of a case.
Okay. Now, do you find that even as you engage with a lot of these issues, that members of the public, individuals who could just be on their mobile phone, the gadget that you talk about, are aware of what the lines are aware of what the rules are, and are following within those rules and boundaries?
So that's where the challenge is. And we would say that the digital economy, or rather the digital platform, is evolving so fast. It's evolving at a higher speed, more than the public can uptake and understand what is clearly happening. Our case, in example, today we're talking about the 5G. And very many members of public are not aware of what 5G would be and the difference between 5G and 4G, for example. However, when you look at the potentials that the 5G comes with, it's quite enormous. But the uptake of that is done in a way that is not well articulated in members of public's mind. And so a lot of us are engaging or just interacting with the environment without publicly knowing the importance or the potentials that they have within such kind of environments. And so, largely I would say there's still room for more sensitization on the public side. There's still more that the government also ought to do in terms of upgrading or upscaling both individual and private and public entities on how to understand what the cyber security space is, how to regulate it, and even looking forward into the emerging technologies and how they would probably pose as a risk, and even the beneficial part of it to the digital economy.
Okay.
So Well, you've just mentioned about 5G, and if you look at the debates in other parts of the world with regard to 5G, take for example the debate equipment between China, US, geopolitics with regard to 5G, and these squarely lies in matters to do with security in terms of securing a nation, and also being able to control the infrastructure that we have. So as we talk about the infrastructure 5G coming into the country and the security that needs to be in place, and also just being prepared in handling what is coming, one would assume the government must be in the forefront in doing that. But that aside, the public as well will be consuming this 5G. So in terms of the public understanding what is coming, the contracts they will be entering with the service providers in the future, is that part of what is in the policy?
Right. Aseto, you are right in asking that question. And when you interact with the document, I would say most of us haven't. I was just doing my own polls, and I understood that 1 in every 10 people, only one has interacted with the strategy and what it entails, what is inside the strategy itself. And so coming back to that question, there's a lot of enhancement on how we are going to relate, or rather how public and private entities should relate in terms of the PPPs and the contracts that they are in. I think we've said a number of times that the devil is in the details. So there are a number of contracts that multinationals are now looking forward into, bringing their services into the country. And yes, when you look at Huawei, the IBMs, the Ciscos, and the rest, those are big multinationals. This conversation actually has, for a long time, been left for the big techs and the big companies that have the leverage of probably airing their views out there. But then we want to look at it in a way that let the conversation be to all of us. Let all of us be able to look at the document and submit their views, because it's more about you and me, whether you are in business, you are in education, you are in healthcare, or you're simply owning a mobile phone or a smartphone. All this has the benefit of showing how we are going to interact, how you're going to create new jobs, how you're going to leverage on consumption of e-services that the government is currently rolling out. So those are nitty-gritties, like the contracts. In most cases, they are opaque. No one is able to, get deep down into it and probably understand the content of a contract. But we are saying it's essential. So part of what the new strategy is talking about, actually, we are talking about what we call the critical information infrastructure, in addition to the other 6 pillars of strategy 2022-2027. That particular pillar that is added onto the new strategy 2025-2029 tries to make it much more easier to access such kind of information, like the contracts. If we have a contract between a multinational, say we have a contract between Huawei and the registrar of persons, we need to understand what are these contracts talking about. Is there any component of that contract that may compromise our safety? For example, I think it's in the public domain that Huawei was accused of sniffing into
espionage.
Yes. And so if it has a contract probably with the registrar of persons, that is the institution that has the capability or has our digital information, whether in soft or in physical, they are all converged at the same point. If they would sniff, I think you can just imagine the magnitude, the impact that would have on the economy of our nation, or even to you as an individual. So the conversation has actually broadened enough, and the strategy has actually given us the ability now to submit our views, look at the contracts, suggest how they should be formulated in a way that doesn't compromise the security of the nation. Actually, when you look at the strategy itself, it's talking more about safety of Kenyans online. And that is according to, that's a given right according to the Constitution, Chapter 4, Section 29. Yes.
Okay. Because also when we talk about cybersecurity, we talk about cybercrime. Let's open this up a little bit, and to stay away, to maybe get away from the theoretical a little bit, and say that what are things that folks are involved in that are crimes that we're seeing happening today, that are actual crimes that we should actually watch out for.
And that's quite a number. And what would probably bring out is that we have espionage, as we've talked about. And espionage may be a crime, but the public, who are our focal point for today, may not be aware that they are engaging in a crime. So you walk into an institution or a public entity. When you leave, of course, there will be some information that would either come through an app or would pop up asking you to give it, some kind of information. Yeah, I think once in a while you've been into a hotel. Once you leave, there's some questions that then pop up in your phone and asks you, how is the standard media? Do they have this and that? How would you rate them? That kind of information, we are not sure who is the consumer. At some point, you may find that you have given a very critical information to an entity that then may come up back to compromise the security of the nation. We also have a lot of information that is flying around, basically from users who are not well conversant with the social media and the law. So you go and start harassment, and you may not understand it as harassment. That is what I've seen with many young people. They may not understand it as harassment, but at the end of the day, there is something that you have invoked that then conflicts with the law.
What do you mean exactly? So when I abuse somebody online, or what exactly are we talking about here?
Of course, it could be abuse, but it could also be someone trying to, talk about your morphology, for example. Yeah, we have, young people trying to, look smart for various reasons, but then there are also others who would troll them.
Like body shaming and
yes,
things like
online.
This. Okay.
Online. And that's a common crime area where most people engage in without knowing that, this is a crime. Or if they know, they are not well conversant of what would be the impact of such kind of activities online. Now, this is an area that I have found that much as it has been, publicized, much as people have been sensitized, there is no matching statistics to show that we are experiencing some downward trend on such kind of activities.
So it's increasing. People are using social media. People are using the internet to actually, start wars from person to person.
There is an increase on that, and much of the effort that the government is trying to put into sensitizing the members of public into it still goes unattended to. Or most people who then engage in such kind of activities are not able to, simultaneously understand that now I have crossed the line of ethics and morality.
So this is my question. Are there guidelines for people to know that this threshold you cannot cross? Is there something, for example, we know it's very clear, and I guess this is one of the reasons why the strategy is being set up, but they said, we know that you cannot take a gun pointed at somebody and take their belongings from them. It is a crime according to the law. You cannot steal from people. It is a crime. Do we know, for example, that it is a crime for me to get on the internet today and start to attack or troll somebody else? And what severity does it then bring about? Will I be fined? Can I be arrested? What would happen? What are the guidelines in terms of what I can or cannot do with this new media that is at everybody's fingertips?
Right. Of course, I would say that with the much publicization of the law, we currently now have the Computer and Cybercrime Misuse Act of 2018, and it stipulates very well what is within your domain and what then would stipulate a violation. However, what I'm saying is that there is still some room for, enhancing that kind of a clarion call very few people have interacted with those laws, much as they've been existing since 2018. People have been prosecuted and people have been fined. However, there is still much more increase in terms of committing those crimes from the public sectors, individuals, and many more. And now we have a robust cybersecurity and data protection act that has come in, trying also to address the same. And I would say there's been a lot of information and public fora that has really tried to, enable members of public understand what is crime and what is not within the cyberspace.
Okay, let's take a break at this point. We're talking with Hannington Chumba, and we're looking at the National Cyber Security Strategy 2025-2029 and the role of the public. In the role of the public in terms of what you can do, but I think there's also great opportunity here to understand what you cannot do, because then we get into a crime situation. Somebody says, well, I didn't know that I couldn't do that. I mean, I've been doing it all this time. Who is then going to regulate that? Those are some of the conversations that we're having this hour on the Situation Room, and we're going to take a break, look at a few things, and then come back and continue with that with Hannington after this. Director of the Kenya Forensics Examiners, and we're looking at essentially what then forms the need to have a strategy towards cyber security and the role of the public. Understanding what boundaries cybersecurity draws then points us in the direction where we're saying, well, it's necessary to have a strategy. If people don't even understand what laws they're breaking, if people don't understand, what you cannot do within this space, then there's the need for a strategy.
How on earth do people participate in something they don't understand? In some cases, they don't even know. And in some cases, maybe they've witnessed the functions of it, but they've never known that is what they're witnessing. So, as you say correctly, hence the strategy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So, who put together the strategy, and what are some of the things that we're looking into, and what would it guide?
Right. So the strategy, let me go back a little bit and say that this is the second strategy. The first strategy was 2022-2027, the one that we are currently utilizing. And this is put together by the Minister of Interior in collaboration.
You just repeat that again. The first one was 2022.
2022, 2027.
That's the first one.
That is the first strategy.
Okay.
The second is 2025, the one that is now a draft, to 2029. It's a 5-year roadmap plan through which we expect to be formulated and guided or ruled upon.
Okay.
So yes, I was trying to explain that this is actually done by the Minister of Interior in collaboration with other stakeholders like the ICT Authority, and we also have a coordination committee called NC4, that is the National Cybercrime Coordination Committee, that now has the responsibility to respond to all the cyber crime issues in Kenya. So when they came up with the strategy, 2025-2029, it obviously spoke to the inefficiency or some discrepancies or the gaps that was then realized in the 2022-2025 strategy. However, they were not like inefficiency or gaps per se, but then whatever has been now added in 2025-2029 is in addition to what the 2022-2027 strategy has achieved. Part of what it has achieved, of course, is the formulation of the NC4, which now gives a roadmap on how to respond to cybercrime issues. It also established the Cybercrime and Data Privacy Act. It also came up with the Kenya Critical Information Infrastructure. So what is now added on 2025-2029 is an enhanced incident detection and prevention response. We also have the collaboration of our digital space with strategic partners, and just putting it into perspective, what we had earlier talked about, this is now where the treaties and the collaboration pact, the details then come in. I think probably when you talk about enhancement, it must be speaking to, there were no clarity in terms of how we were now partnering with the international collaboration. And we now have to enhance it and probably make it much more visible.
So when you talk about collaboration with international partners, case in point, you look at the big tech companies in the country and the data that they take, and which ends up informing advertisement decisions in the country moving forward. And that has been a big case outside the country. But even as we talk about that, where is the Office of Data Protection Agency in all this conversation? Because here, as much as we talk about cybersecurity, there's also data that belongs to the citizens. The custodian is the data office. Is it part and parcel of this strategy?
Right. So when we talk about the stakeholders, we are talking about key government ministries and departments that have their fingers into issues of cyberspace. So among them, we're talking about the Office of Data Protection Commissioner. We're also talking about the ICT Authority. We are talking about the CA. We are talking about the police. We are talking about many other institutions that also are private, but also are critical. So when you talk about critical infrastructure, we are talking about probably Safaricom, for example, these institutions that may not really be part of government, but then they are parastatals in they are probably handling a lot of information that when an incident probably would happen, it would impact greatly the economy of Kenya. So yes, indeed, the Data Protection Commission is part of the stakeholders into this bigger entity called the strategy stakeholders in cybercrime.
The two questions I want to ask. One, within this country of Kenya, do we have facilities where people can actually get trained in matters forensic?
As we speak, if you go through the strategy, that is one of the things that the strategy proposes to introduce. That is the National Cybersecurity Academy that would be addressing the capacity of individuals and even organizations in terms of training. However, as it is right now, it is not really specific that the government would have, or rather has, an institution where cybercrime professionals get trained, but mostly it is on an individual basis, and a few would be doing it from the corporate level. And as a training, you'd find that we have a lot of institutions, both physical and online, that provide the training depending on the need.
I asked the question because there are very many key areas of forensics. It isn't just one.
Sure.
There are probably around 9. Now, when we look at the array of areas that a forensics meets the need or seeks to meet the need of, what is it that in this country you would say are the specific areas that our strategy will cover to ensure that these needs that call for the application of forensic science into?
So I think need would go, or rather would be informed by the consumers. Part of why we are calling members of public then to submit their views is that once they've gone through the draft, they need to identify how they will interact with it and the places where they feel there are gaps. Because as an individual, I would say there's a lot of need on how we regulate information technology, the AI part of it, and the adoption of the new Internet of Things. That is a big thing that is coming very soon. And if we don't mitigate it, or rather be able to have a foresight on how we are going to handle it, then it's going to be a disaster. And this is not something that is quite new in this country, but we can as well look at the foreign countries and those who are a little bit developed, than the US. You find today they are grappling with how do we then regulate an AI, because an AI is basically a machine that mimics human capabilities. It means that you have to train it. But what are the data that we use to train it? Because that is what will inform how it reacts to whatever kind of instruction that you give it.
Give us some practical examples in terms of what you're speaking of.
So,
I mean, we've seen it happen here that we can use technology to say certain things or do certain things. The most recent in the country being whereby, people have been castigated for using social media to depict certain things, putting somebody in a coffin, putting somebody in a position where they weren't before.
Exactly.
Right? These are some of the things that we'll be speaking about. How do you regulate such a thing?
So, regulation of social media or technologies that come with social media is an ongoing conversation. It is not here nor there that we can say that we have a one-stop shop or strategy that would address that, because as we speak today, even you're learning. Yeah, there are things that you don't know, but each and every day you're learning. So if, for example, we put a threshold that this is the much that you can learn, and this is the much how this is the much you would probably be able to unlearn what you've learned, it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So regulation of cyber space or technologies is an evolving phenomena. But as we speak today, I would say there are a lot of data that is going into training the artificial intelligence. And a lot of information that then comes out of it is what we call the false positive. An example would be that today, as I log in, I come in using my biometric. It could be something to do with my iris. Safaricom tells us today that your voice is your password.
Yes.
Now, tomorrow, AI would be able to mimic that voice and use it to open a very critical infrastructure. The question then comes, how would you differentiate that this was done by an AI and not a city, for example?
Unless the person, because it's interesting, because just the other day I sat in a meeting and I heard a promo of me. I said something which I know I didn't say. So at some point they
With
had
your voice?
Yeah, it was my voice. It was my voice,
You
but
see.
I didn't do the recording. So somebody had, of course, had me say something, and they went into a studio and regenerated
That voice.
my voice to promo some product or something. And I sat there and I was gobsmacked and I said, wow, this is great. But I was never in a sound booth. I never said this. I didn't do it. So unless you're in the presence of the person for them to be able to deny or confirm that they actually did that recording, maybe you have studio time and a studio log, you wouldn't be able to say, I wouldn't be able to say I didn't do it. But I can tell you that I didn't, because I didn't. But how then do you now, because how are you going to prove it? How will you disprove it? Especially if somebody uses it for something untoward,
Sure.
Because you can create entire speeches using I can just say my name is Ndu, and they'll take my voice and replicate it and put it on the thing, and we can go.
I tell you, and it could be, it could also be both audio and visual.
Yeah.
For in this case, probably you just heard of your voice, and then of course you didn't say the words that probably were being.
And this was innocent. I mean,
Yes.
it was an innocent thing. It was a promo for something. It was innocent.
And imagine now we are gearing into Internet of Things proper.
Deepfake.
Yes, the deepfakes. Now it's coming full circle, and so we cannot even imagine the kind of things that would probably be coming. The things that would be perpetrated on such kind of platforms. So the strategy here is trying to invite the public, like you, like Dennis and City here, to then look at how are we going to interact with all these enormous innovations that are now coming in. So we have e-mobility, as I'd spoken earlier, and these are vehicles that probably will not be driven specifically by a human being, but it's AI. Yes. So you feed into your location, and probably you give it some instructions here and there, and you take the back seat, and probably you fall asleep, and you find yourself in Somali, for example.
So somebody else could be controlling the thing.
Yes, that could easily happen, or even someone could even sabotage and create chaos, maybe in the city, and we have no way to move out of it. Then the question then comes, what had we put in mind earlier on before deployment of such technologies that mitigated such kind of issues?
Because Hannington, it could be innocent, isn't it?
It could be.
It could be. What we're trying to do is have a more efficient transport system, for example,
yes.
and we can use the technology of AI to be able to do this. Somebody's standing outside a hotel, their car is in the parking lot, and then you click a button and the car comes empty to you. That's easy because you don't have to carry all your luggage out there. The car will come to you.
Yes.
So in the genesis of this technology, what you were trying to do was make life a little bit better. But the world of crime does not offer you that comfortability, because there will be people who will say, this is great, we can move a car on its own, nobody has to drive it. What can't you do? So how do you regulate that?
So the regulation, as I said, starts from the data that we use to train it. And who then regulates that this is the correct data? Do we even know when it's collected? Today as I was coming in, I just gave out my ID and I gave out my telephone number or subscriber number. Do we know where that information gets to? Because I've seen him scribbling something on a black book. You know, when it gets filled, who is the consumer? Where is it stored? How safe is it? Who is able to access such kind of information? And what can we do with that kind of information? Today I can go and maybe establish a company using those two information, my ID, my number, and someone has a company in your name with your credentials. Now you know the kind of impact that would then cause. Then he goes and tenders for some very big million multinational loan somewhere, and then you are here left with some debt that you are not even aware you took. And more worrying would be in the healthcare space. So someone would probably just prescribe something that is very harmful to you, and it's just through an AI without the approval of the actual doctor. Yes. And so how do you probably mitigate that? The question still is answered by what data are we using to then inform what that AI is capable of doing. Most of the time, we leave it like that. We get into supermarkets each and every day. We do a lot of shoppings. We buy this, we buy that, and we walk out. Unknowest to us is that someone is collecting some data innocently, probably to then inform our buying patterns, our preference in terms of the product that we consume. But that information may end up in a territory that is not meant to be. And probably someone has just sold it. Now we need to understand some of the things that are actually informing the decisions that an AI would do. Yes, because you may not even trace it that this one came out of the purchase or transaction that I did 2-3 months down the line.
But is there any nation on this planet that is actually prepared for the ramifications of AI? Because with AI as we know it, there's always an improvement on it. And it looks like it is an improvement that is going to go well into the future.
Yes.
Yes, to the point where there are even those, when you look at some of the doomsday movies that we saw, where AI more or less takes over everything that we do, some of the AI and the development that we see are not far off from those doomsday movies. Is there any nation really that is prepared for it?
I think, CT, there won't be an answer like, yes, there is a nation that is well prepared, because how do we define well prepared? Do we want to say that, yes, you have put in place a policy that would be able to quickly inform in good time that this is bad and that is good? Or would be well informed like you have a citizenry that are cyberspace aware or AI ready? You know, that is not something that it's something that keeps on evolving, I would say.
Yes. Maybe not solving, but keeping up. Because that's why I began by asking, do we have institutions where people can be trained? Because this is an open and free market. And you can even teach yourself using that same gadget and that same AI to teach yourself and train yourself how to use that same AI. Now, if we do not have training facilities of our own where we can actually train people to ensure that whatever we teach them meets our needs. Let's say, for instance, every once in a while, one reads that a case could not go forward because of insufficient evidence. Now, forensic evidence is difficult to dispute.
Sure.
Unless you can provide perhaps more profound evidence, forensic, which now disputes that. Then there is the preemptive and preventative aspect of it, understanding how people who are likely to commit crimes think. Okay? That is now forensic psychology. So that there are people who are trained in it, and when something happens, they can easily tell you this one, it's likely to be, and they usually spot on because that's what they've studied. I've given just 2 examples. The preparedness, in my view, is what is important.
Yes.
Because it helps you keep up.
Yes.
And I think, City, as you talk about preparedness, it's now what the strategy comes to put in place. Because if you look at, let's take, for example, places like Europe, they've come up with a Data Services Act that pretty much goes into controlling how AI is consumed, how it's prepared, how it's trained, so that it is in their database to do that. Through the strategy, I presume, is coming in place to give that protectionary measure. But even while at it, there is need for these communication, these talk that you're having to be escalated to get to the people, just so they know what to do and what not to do. Is that perhaps some of the recommendations in the strategy? And if so, how do you achieve that?
So you're right. Strategy basically is a plan. And when you don't plan, actually we say you plan to fail.
Right.
So what is in place as we speak is all that combined, that we want to have an area where we are then, aware of what we are actually protecting. We are in a place where we can comfortably say that most of our stakeholders, that is you and me and the multinationals and the experts, are able to articulate issues that are well within the framework within which we want to be guided by within the 5 years. And so, as I said earlier, part of the strategy today on the 2025-2029 ICT security strategy points to establishment of an academy, National Cybersecurity Academy. Now, part of what we need to then interrogate is what are these courses that will be offered by the National Cybersecurity Academy? Will they be at a cost? How affordable would they be? What are the curriculum that then would be informing what the National Cybersecurity Academy training on? Are they things that inform whatever is currently the challenges within the environment that we are operating at? So if you give your views and ask that we want to understand much more on what this academy would be offering, then you give the institution an easier time then now to, come up with something that informs the challenges that are currently being manifested within the environment. But you see that most people have not even interacted with the document, and 25th of April this month, would be the last day of submission.
Okay.
This strategy has been on this platform for slightly more than 2 months today. Yes.
Okay.
But I believe Kenyans, as usual, would give that last minute push.
But did you tell people well in advance that it was going to be where it is?
So, that is now the work of the National NC4 and the Minister of Interior.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not part of that stakeholder in itself. I'm here now to urge the members of public. I'm also submitting my views like the rest of us. Yes.
Actually, you're a member of the club because the knowledge that you have and the expertise that you have puts you squarely there. So information pertaining to your specialized discipline, you would know. That is why I asked you the question.
Sure. So I've tried to do it on a personal level. If you get to my X handle, I've tried to urge members of public to submit their views, go through the draft, submit their views, so that they are part of the conversation. They can talk about their ideas. They can talk about the challenges that they face. They would probably be able to interrogate whether the strategy has something to do with people living with disabilities, the women and children. And this is a conversation that would still be ongoing. However, when it comes that we have now submitted our views, then your contribution would have a little bit of challenge reaching the strategy team, so that it is part of what would be formulating the draft.
So how do we get on the platform?